All right, Jonah part 5. Here we go. So, aside from Jonah going to Sheol, being resurrected, and then spit out of the mouth of a fish, there was also an eclipse. The Bur-Sagal eclipse occurred over the capital city of Nineveh in the middle of the reign of King Jeroboam II, who ruled Israel from 786 to 746 BC. According to the book of 2 Kings, chapter 14, verse 25, Jonah lived and prophesied during the reign of King Jeroboam II. To be more specific, the biblical scholar Donald Wiseman, you gotta love that last name, Wiseman, speculates that the eclipse actually was up and in the sky around the time that Jonah would have been in Nineveh. Eclipses have long been regarded as omens of significant events. In the United States, the path of the April 8th eclipse of the year 2024 passed through 7 cities named Nineveh, directly through 2 and partially through 5. The fact that it directly passed through 2 leads me to believe that America has one of 2 possible directions that it can go in. The other 5 that it partially passed through represent God's hand of grace. Grace is contingent upon what direction we choose, just like it was in Nineveh, contingent of whether or not they repented. By now, it should be evident that God set up Jonah for a comeback. This time, Jonah obeyed and went to Nineveh, preaching the message that God gave him. 40 more days and Nineveh will be overturned. The Ninevites believed God. The king decreed the people to call urgently on God and to give up their evil ways and their violence. Who knows, he said, God may yet relent, and with compassion turn from his fierce anger so that we would not perish. The sailors had also asked Jonah to call on his God. The same God that threw Jonah into the sea to save the sailors in the ship brought Jonah out of the sea to save Nineveh and all of its people. Both the sailors and the Ninevites converted to Jonah's God, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the land. And I love the fact that the Ninevites went from worshiping a God that had mastery over land and sea to worshiping the God of heaven, who made the land and the sea. For man was not created in the image of a fish. Man was created in the image of God. So, instead of rejoicing over the salvation of Nineveh through his preaching, instead, Jonah was angry with God for sparing Nineveh through his compassion. Nineveh did not deserve to be saved, and as a prophet of God, Jonah did not need to be made a fool for a false prophecy. So, east of the city, Jonah went and built himself a shelter to shade himself from the sun, as he got ready to sit back and watch the fate of Nineveh unfold. Out of compassion, the good Lord provided Jonah with a vine or a gourd to shade him from the sun. This made Jonah a happy camper, but the next day, God also then provided a worm that ate the vine, followed by a 3rd day of scorching heat. So now Jonah was angry enough to die over the loss of a vine that he did not plant or tend, but he had no concern for all the lives of the Ninevites. Time to see further into this. So the vine represents the law, and the tola worm that eats the vine becomes the embodiment of the law. Now we know from Psalm 22 that the tola worm gives its own life to save its young, just as Christ gives his life to save each and every one of us. God told Jonah that there are more than 120,000 people in Nineveh that didn't know their right hand from their left. So, when was the last time you could not tell your right hand from your left? When you were a child. So the blood of the 120,000 children that were innocent enough not to know their right hand from their left saved the rest of Nineveh. Just like the innocent blood of the Father's only begotten Son saved the world. Jonah couldn't handle God giving the Ninevites a second chance. Yet God gave Jonah a second chance to live and to do God's will by supernaturally preserving him in the fish and delivering him to the doorstep of his destination. Looks like Jonah left by boat and he returned by submarine. Seems like a pretty wild ride to me. Okay, in all seriousness though, in closing out here, just what is the sign of Jonah? In Matthew chapter 17, verses 24 through 27, Jesus asks, "What do you think, Simon? From whom do the kings of the earth collect duty and taxes? From their own sons or from others?" "From others," Peter answered. "Then the sons are exempt," Jesus replied. "But so that we may not offend them, go back to the lake and throw out your line. Take the first fish you catch, open its mouth, and you will find a 4-drachma coin. Take it and give it to them for my taxes and yours." The 4-drachma that came out of the fish's mouth represents Jesus as the sign of Jonah. Not only was Jesus crucified for sin, but in doing so, he paid our debt to sin as well. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a huge fish, so the Son of Man will spend 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth.